Hello, and welcome to the Let's Talk Transformation podcasts, where we get big ideas to meet bold action, and today is no exception. I am delighted to welcome Alfredo Mathew III, a visionary educator, nonprofit leader, social entrepreneur, and founder of Working World LLC, and co-founder of soventures.com. Alfredo, welcome to the show.
Fantastic to be here. Great to see you, Susie.
Thanks for coming. I'm looking forward to our conversation. Alfredo, you are the architect behind SPCC.1. So the world's
Yes.
first shared prosperity community corporation. And you've had an eclectic career and life journey, and you now work at the intersection of education, workforce, and entrepreneurship with a
Yes.
specific focus on equity. And I know you've been the force behind legislation and models that have shifted hundreds of black and brown entrepreneurs from wage earners to asset owners, particularly through inclusive capital and cooperative business models. And you continue that quest with SO Ventures. And there is so much I could say about all of that.
Yeah.
But we can pick up the details of these different steps and your thoughts on these different steps as we go. I would like to get into the operational side of transformation, economic transformation, and how we need to rethink leadership to get there. So if I look at the fact that you're bridging education, entrepreneurship, and equity through what you're doing, what sparks the most innovation for you, Alfredo, at the intersection of these fields?
Well, I would say kind of where does innovation come from?
Mm,
And I believe innovation comes from the edges.
always.
And I think one of the reasons why, right, I don't have a financial background. I'm not, I haven't been an investment banker for 30 years.
Mm,
I'm really interested in finance and I'm really interested in corporate structure and I'm really interested in private equity roll-up models and I'm
mm,
really interested in a lot of things that I have no background in, but throughout my career and my life, I pursue a path and then I invariably hit a wall.
mm,
And when I hit a wall, I bang my head against that wall a little bit and then I recognize I am never going to change public education.
mm.
I am never going
Interesting.
to change small business access to capital if
Mm,
I'm doing like a very traditional path. And so I've learned you need to get way bigger
mm,
or you need to go way outside of the box and way around. And when you think divergently, when you go to the edges, either the top or the sides,
yeah,
you can pretty much get around anything because you realize that these are just constructs that things that seem permanent, nothing is permanent. Nothing.
mm,
And there's always a way around things.
totally. And we spoke before the show about you hitting all these walls and that these walls were sort of flexion points, not obstacles at the end of the day, because it's all about constant reinvention. And that transformation happens there at those intersections where one, you don't think it will happen, two, it's on the edge of an already well-established system, and three, you have to believe in something bigger than what you're doing, is what I take from our conversation. Can you share a breakthrough moment when an incubator model really sparks transformation in an underinvested community? What I really like is this
Sure,
idea of regenerative models, particularly financial ones, that are essentially leveling a playing field.
sure. Well, I'll give my own experience launching ESO Ventures.
Mm,
And that experience happened during the pandemic, early months of the pandemic in 2020, when I had for years been involved in, I was an educator, I was led a nonprofit, I did entrepreneurial ecosystem building, connecting high schools to Silicon Valley companies. I saw the gap between these large corporations, Salesforce, PayPal, SAP, EY, and the local schools in California. And I said, oh, these worlds are never going to meet. These guys have a
mm,
global talent pool. This is local. I wanted to get into community-based entrepreneurship. And so I started my own consultancy, Working World LLC. I got a small contract with the city of Oakland and Merritt College to activate the MacArthur Corridor, which is a local community in East Oakland,
mm,
historically Black community in Oakland. And basically, I didn't have much resources. And so one of the other keys to innovation is I no longer believe you need a big pot of money to do something innovative. I think it actually is more beneficial to have constrained resources,
Mm.
and you really have to like take risks and try things, and you have to put skin in the game. And so, in June, July, August of 2020, a few months after the pandemic, when the racial reckoning was happening in the
Mm.
United States,
Mm.
there was like everyone was home. Everyone was starting businesses, and people were basically not working and they wanted to pursue entrepreneurship. And so I got a $25,000 contract from a city council member, Lauren Taylor, and from the local community college, activate this corridor. What am I going to do to activate this corridor, right, that
Mm.
has been disinvested for 50 years? Well, first thing I did is I said, I can't do this by myself. And I reached out to two East Oakland entrepreneurs I really respected, Benoit and Martha Hernandez, and I got them to engage. Not with money, not with the promise of a big payday, just like, I need your help. I believe that your backgrounds, your experiences as successful small business, you can help. And we
Mm.
just started meeting every week, and we've met every week for 5 years since, and we grew this thing from 25,000 to 22 million in 2 years.
Wow.
But we started with just Zoom calls like this. We literally threw up a website, we put it out there. We got 150 local entrepreneurs, all Black and brown, from East Oakland to reply. 38 of them, we just started these cohort meetings, no curriculum, no nothing, just conversation. And it was in, I'll never forget, the Thursday night group D. That group of 8 entrepreneurs was magic. And I know
Mm.
it was magic because we would have these conversations. We would leave so excited from these calls because if we can go back and remember, like, people weren't going out.
Mm.
People were just going out for the necessity things. When we came together, we just formed such a strong community, and we just organically created something.
Mm-hmm.
But the key is not to just organically create something, right? Just have like a self free associating community. On the other side, I was doing business development, and I was doing structure, and I was right pitching, and right, we grew from 25,000 to $75,000 in resources,
Mm-hmm.
and then leveraged that to get some funding from the Irvine Foundation, $100,000, so we could do a couple more cohorts the next year. And then I was talking from Merritt College to the Bay Area Community College Consortium, working on a $500,000 deal to go from one college to a cohort of 5 community colleges around the Bay Area. And
Mm-hmm.
then while we were doing that, Ben was writing legislation, the California Entrepreneurship Capital in the Community Act, because someone said, one of our advisors, Steve Carnaval, was like, this is a problem that the state should be involved with.
Mm.
The state had a $90 billion surplus, the state of California, in 2021. And we got it endorsed by the city of Oakland, got it endorsed by the state senator, and we got $8 million at the end of 2021. In 2022, before, like, we didn't have results, we didn't have all this infrastructure. We just had our finger on a problem. We identified an issue, which is that millions of people are going into entrepreneurship. More and more Black women, more and more Latinos are creating businesses, and they are sole proprietors.
Mm-hmm.
They are earning less than $100,000 in revenue. They're small, and they can't grow. They can't access capital. They can't access contracts. And the most transformative thing that can happen with business ownership is you can go from being a sole proprietor to an employer enterprise.
Mm.
The gap between someone who is just a sole proprietor working for themselves, they're basically self-employed, and when you're earning enough revenue that you can hire employees and you can start to build systems and you can grow beyond the founder, beyond the business of one, then you're generating wealth. And it's
Mm.
normally local wealth, and you're able to hire people within your community. That is like, that's the issue we identified. That's the issue I'm still working on now. I do believe that the companies are going to change. The
Mm.
the approaches that I take, that others take, change, But when you have a real issue, a real problem that is intersectional, and you attack it from lots of different angles, I mean, that's generational work.
Mm. And basically, I mean, that is an amazing journey. And I'm hearing two or three things that are foundational to that. One is small, concentrated, quite intimate groups of people to understand the issues. Two is to get skin in the game from systems. So systems
Hmm.
that state systems and governmental systems. And three is to help people believe that it's possible. And so if I take those three examples, Alfredo, what design principles or frameworks guide how you build entrepreneur-led ecosystems that so that they can regenerate rather than just sustain? Because from what I'm hearing, this is a regenerative wealth model, and I know one of the principles is, the pre-distribution vs redistribution financial discussion. So if you had to sort of give us a framework or the design principles of how you got there, what would you say?
All right. Well, I was working on this very recently, so I'm going to see
Okay.
if I can remember.
Okay.
But one thing that I think is incredibly important, and I love design principles because we need constraints.
Yeah.
One principle that's incredibly important is ownership first.
Hmm.
In the economic systems that I'm really interested in ownership, democracy, and shared prosperity. Ownership first. And
Hmm.
that means that the workers need to have an ownership stake. The customers need to have an ownership stake. There needs to be distributed ownership because I believe that if we are literally not on the cap table,
Hmm.
if you do not have an ownership stake, you cannot create a regenerative economy. Wages are flat,
Mm.
wages are self-employment. Ownership, asset ownership, capital assets ownership, that's regenerative, right? That's
Mm.
how you get the upside. So I think we need to be building systems where everyone owns. I don't
Mm.
mean that you own everything and that
Yes.
it's a complete direct democracy and everyone's vote is equal. No, but
Mm.
everyone needs to own a piece of that asset. Two, as you said, is pre-distribution. And
Mm.
I don't think that people really understand what pre-distribution is. We live in models that are very redistributive,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Everything is about let's create the value over here, and
Yeah.
then we're going to tax that success and we're going to redistribute it. And a lot of that redistribution is about subsidization
Mm.
so that people who don't have resources can access the market.
No, it's just
I
widening
think
the
that
gap.
has
Yeah.
proven that it fails. That
Mm.
never works. And it
Mm.
does just like the gap grows over time.
Mm.
Redistribution goes back to that first principle. Everyone needs to have an ownership stake. When businesses win, the community should win.
Yeah.
Because if the state of California is investing into the entrepreneurial ecosystem, as that entrepreneurial ecosystem grows, the people in that ecosystem should rely less on the state.
Yes.
That is like the opportunity. What pre-distribution does, we do not need subsidy from the state if we can afford school and healthcare and food and
Mm.
housing on our own.
Mm.
And I think that's really what people want. People want autonomy. People want agency.
Totally.
People don't want a handout. People just want to work and they want dignity and they want that work to be able to grow with time. So that pre-distribution, we actually need to be thinking about the cap tables and the equity stakes of businesses. And we need to ensure that equity is built into the cap table. If I'm building technology, the users need to be on that cap table. The
Mm.
people who are contributing the content to Substack need to be getting part of the return. You're going to say something about that.
I was going to say, if we go back to design principles, that's the heart of UX, employee experience, user-centered design is about understanding the user, his or her needs, what they're feeling, what they want, and therefore getting to a result that suits them. And that makes me think it's so simple, but it's not so simple, is it, Alfredo?
Well, it's not simple because that's not the way we've designed things.
Yeah.
Everything is designed to, it's all about, so when I look at entrepreneurship, It's about the founder, skin in the game, and the original investors.
Mm.
And most businesses are not successful.
Yep.
Tremendous risk. They take the risk, it fails, they fall down. Hopefully, they have the resources and the learning that they can get up and they can try and try again. And eventually, they get success. And when they get success, all of a sudden it's this exponential growth and they get this return and then they're like super successful, right? And
Mm.
then
Mm.
we know with venture capital, right, only 1 out of 100 of the bets are going to pay for the entire fund.
Mm.
That kind of winner take all model is not pre-distributive.
No,
That is
clearly.
a very redistributive model.
Mm.
And in pre-distribution, yeah, we're going to take lots of bets, but there's a floor. You're not going to fall and put everything on your credit card and then everything dies and 85% of all businesses are going to be gone in 2 years and there's only 1 out of 10 that are going to last. There
Mm.
needs to be a floor and a ceiling.
Mm.
I am not saying that, we shouldn't reward success. Yeah, if you're taking risks, if you have an innovative idea, great. I just recognize that none of us is doing any of this on our own. We're all interdependent.
Mm.
Everything that I'm doing is building off of the work that other people have done. It is very difficult for me to know where my intellectual property and ownership stake begins and ends
Of course.
because everything I know, I'm just I'm I'm scraping the internet and the global consciousness just like everyone else.
Mm.
So
Mm.
ownership and pre-distribution, super important principles. Human scale
Yeah.
is a third one.
Mm.
And I am a big believer that part of what we're going through is that, yeah, it does feel so big and it is overwhelming and it is inhuman and it is this giant bureaucracy. Well, guess what? All of us evolved in small human groups
Mm.
and we work best in small human groups. Do you want to be one person, right, working with AI and, you've got a $1 billion company? Or do you want to be part of a small group that is
Mm.
connected to other small groups? And I think that if we build things that are, they basically say communities are best at around 150 people.
Mm. Mm.
I'm not saying that you go live out in the woods with 150 people. We can be parts of multiple groups,
Totally.
lots of groups of 150
Mm.
people. That's a network.
Mm.
You can be a part of multiple nodes, but the things we build, we need to be thinking about human scale because we need to be prioritizing human relationship.
Totally. And I think human scale is one of the hardest things. So if I look at the sort of ownership, pre-distribution and human scale, building community, which I'm a big believer in, is also a shift to something less ego-driven and something more collective, which makes me ask the question, I never question, Alfredo, how powerful that is. I never question that that's the way to scale human-centered topics. But the growing economic divides that all leaders face today, how can those three principles be embedded in corporate transformation plans to make these things equity, among other things, but also ownership and sort of interdependence between the different teams or parts of the organization? How can we put them at the heart of corporate transformation plans and not make them afterthoughts, which they often are, is my observation.
So then this is the question of how do we transform the systems that already exist
Mm.
versus how do we build them from the beginning?
Yeah.
And I think it's easier to build things from the beginning with the design principles. It's
Mm.
harder to help institutions transition.
Yeah.
But the thing is, institutions are going to have to transition whether they want to or not.
Mm.
And I'm going to give an example of this
Mm.
from a industry sector that probably many of your entrepreneurs and social sector leaders, it's not their world. Public education in the United States. I was a teacher for 14 years, came from a family of educators. My first entrepreneurial ecosystem building, like I wanted to reform education. I
Mm.
wanted to move education from this big, giant factory banking model of education. I was part of the small school movement in New York City to take these big high schools that were failing.
Mm,
Let's create small schools within the schools.
mm,
And Bill Gates funded it. Mayor Bloomberg was the mayor. They took this like really radical education reform thing and they institutionalized it. And they tried this small school movement for 10 years and it didn't really work. It never scaled, but it was an experiment and it taught
mm.
people something. Fast forward 15 years later, it's happening. It's not happening the way that the institutions want it to happen. It's happening by Republican state legislatures saying we're going to promote school vouchers. Milton
Okay.
Friedman back in the 1960s was like, the public sector is a monopoly, it's a giant bureaucracy, the free markets rule. We should have vouchers so that the individual family, the consumer, can choose how to spend the public dollars on the education of their choice. And right now, education in the United States is going through a tremendous transformation, both because of AI, but also because of the school choice movement, which
Mm,
is basically going to defund public education. And families, like in Texas, you're going to get $10,000 next year, whatever you want. You want to go to a Christian school, a Muslim school, you want to go to a micro school, you want like whatever you want to do it. It is going to destroy the public education system. In 10 years, these schools are going to be so underfunded, the demographics are going to shift. There's no way these large bureaucracies are going to be able to withstand school choice and vouchers, let alone AI. It
mm.
is going to be incredibly painful because the bureaucracy couldn't look around the corner and couldn't adapt. So, what I would say, if you are running a large organization and you see how fast the world is changing and you're trying to put your head in the sand,
Mm,
you're going to end up like Xerox. You're going to
mm.
end up like Blockbuster. You're going to end up like large public school districts in the United States who are not adapting fast enough. And
Mm.
I think the solution for schools, you need to empower teachers to create your own small communities and reimagine what public school is with keeping the public infrastructure in place. If you don't empower teachers and empower families and keep that public infrastructure in place, it's all going to be privatized and it's going to be fragmented. And once Humpty Dumpty falls down and breaks apart, it's very difficult to put Humpty Dumpty back together again. And that I think
And
is what's going to happen.
I mean, I love that idea of empowering teachers and families, but that's a whole different mindset. That's not just the system, is it? It's the whole mindset and paradigm way of thinking around the system. And I know education is often slow to transform, but we're also formatted, aren't we, as part of the society, as a parent, as somebody who goes to school, or as a teacher. What do you think we could do there to move the needle, Alfredo? Because, like you say, it could implode this system. So there needs to be some type of contingency.
So I'm reading this book. You can't see
Okay.
it. Ivan Illich,
Yeah.
Deschooling Society.
Deschooling society.
Have you ever heard of Ivan Illich?
I have. I haven't read his book though.
So I'm fascinated by Ivan Illich because in the 1960s and 70s, he was like a prophet, right? He's part of like helped to think through liberation theology and like he just mistrusted institutions
Mm,
from hospitals to schools. And he was basically talking about the corruption of modern institutions and how small communities is the way to go. That's how like, that's human flourishing. We talk a
mm,
lot, or we're trying to talk about human flourishing. Humans flourish in small communities where they're not oppressed by large giant systems. He spoke about that 50 years ago, and he basically planted a seed that led to the school choice movement,
okay.
that led, he's talking about things that led to the internet, right? He's talked about we need webs of learning and all these.
Mm,
We're doing the things that he talked about, but because he was anti-institution,
mm,
there was no policy created. He rejected the capital markets. He did not believe in capitalism. He's basically kind of like a primitive communism kind of guy. There's a lot of people from the 1970s E.F. Schumacher, right? Small is
Mm,
beautiful. There's a
mm,
lot of these thinkers that I look back on and I'm like, oh my God, they're so powerful, but they don't like capitalism. They
mm,
don't like the capital markets. And basically, by all of these thinkers saying we need to empower people, we need to believe in humanism, but capital is bad, that basically leaves like capital is not bad.
mm,
Capital is a tool. Writing is not bad. Writing is a tool. A gun is not bad. A gun is a tool.
mm,
We got to be able to use the tools, and we can't politicize the tools. I would like to see communities learn how to leverage corporate structure,
yeah.
create regenerative business models. You need to be profitable,
Mm,
right? No profit, no purpose, no margin, no mission.
mm,
Like, don't be afraid of capital. Capital
mm,
is good. It's okay, or it's not good or bad. It's neutral.
mm,
Learn how to use capital, learn how to use corporate structure, and create something that can participate in the marketplace and
mm,
compete.
mm.
And so I love these thinkers who like challenge society, but I want to say like we don't get to live in these perfect worlds. Like people are not all good. Like
No.
there's bad people and there's good people. And I'm glad we have government and I'm glad we have the private market. And let's figure out how the private market and the public sector can work better
Mm,
together. And
mm.
let's make sure that people are a part of it. And it's not just big capital and big
Yeah.
government deciding everything.
Two extremes. I mean, basically, it brings me back to one of my favorite words in all this, which is balance. And, when things happen to the extreme like COVID, you do get extremes happening. And it's the same with AI. So if I look at balance and cooperation, which for me are the buzzwords of what you're doing and what we're both aspiring to do in terms of, democratizing access to things, is if I look at AI, which is already threatening, already disrupted industries, you mentioned Nokia, Blockbuster, things like that. What's the role for community-owned platforms there in ensuring that tech doesn't just hollow out local businesses, but actually empowers asset-based ownership and brings with it this sort of pre-distributive, regenerative idea?
So I'm advising an AI startup right now in
Hmm.
higher education.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, and it's cool
Yeah, it sounds
because
it.
basically ChatGTP and
Hmm.
these large LLMs, they're like they want to gobble up everything, right? Like ChatGTP is like, we can do higher education, we can do business,
Hmm.
we can support your kids with mental health. Like they're trying to be the
Or not.
catch-all
Yeah.
for all things, or not,
Mm.
right? I mean, I'm sitting here in my office and my son is like, "Oh, can I talk to ChatGTP?" And I'm serious, and
How old is
and I'm
he?
watching my he's 9,
Okay.
and he's like, "Hi," and he's like having little conversations. But I'm watching it because I
Yes.
know
Yeah.
so much of this is happening without any guidance and
Yeah.
parental control,
Yeah.
and horrible things can happen. There's no guardrails.
No.
But ultimately, we're all aware that whatever we put into these platforms, the platforms own, because we've been trained for the last 30 years, give everything for free. And then basically all the platforms are just surveilling us and they're
Mm.
taking all of our data and they're
Mm.
aggregating it and they're selling it and whatever. So as I'm advising this company that is trying to create a niche market in higher education,
Mm.
because I think it's all about finding niches. You
Totally.
can't compete
Mm.
against the large LLMs. You're not going to
No.
create the infrastructure of AI, but you are going to be able to create the layer on top, the user interface, especially for a niche, because
Mm.
as we know, these large LLMs, they're catch-alls, but the opportunity is how can we create smaller communities that are closed communities
Mm.
where when we're putting our information in, it is being collected in a database and a reservoir that is making our community smarter. And right, so let's say my
Mm.
community is just electricians, residential
Mm.
electricians, and I'm an entrepreneur and I'm supporting other entrepreneurs in this space. We're going to know a lot more about residential electricians and like how to install smart panels
Mm.
than your traditional thing. And as the more people that contribute to this thing, the smarter it gets. And then you have something that's valuable. You
Mm.
have and so the opportunity is we do need to be building AI companies. We do need to be finding niches. And just like with the small communities of schools of teachers coming together, you can't be boutique, you can't be an island. The opportunity is to federate.
Mm,
How can this small community that has this repository of knowledge federate with another community so that we basically have one balance sheet, but we have separate P&Ls? Does that make
mm.
sense?
It does make sense, yeah. I mean, and it's also playing to the idea of if you're the smartest person in the room, move rooms. I mean, we are more intelligent together, but we need to constantly be looking at new, different ways of seeing the same thing. Otherwise, the system is not going to evolve, let alone regenerate.
Yeah, when I think of regeneration, you need to generate first and then you can regenerate.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
too often I see like exploitation on this side, regeneration on this side. And I'm very into we got to generate. We all need to be generating ideas. Like when I read Ivan Illich, and then
mm,
I'm looking at Thich Nhat Hanh, and then
mm,
I'm looking at Milton Friedman, like the ways that I'm putting things together are unique based on I'm generating new ideas by
mm,
combining what already exists.
mm,
And as I generate, the more that we generate, we get to we got to get to the flywheel to the part where we're actually creating so much value that there's a surplus of value and now that value can move around.
mm,
That's what we're not doing well enough and we're not
mm.
doing it fast enough. And I do think it goes back to this idea of federation
Yeah,
because what I see a lot of people doing similar things in parallel paths and they're competing with each other.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's like, oh my God, how many nonprofits are trying to address homelessness and they're
yeah,
not coordinated and collaborated and they're not working with the state?
yeah, yeah. It's another
It's a
one of those
problem.
walls that we have to take apart and put together differently or just redistribute. But looking ahead, therefore, what when I hear you talk about what you do, Alfredo, and I think, wow, the capacity and the potential of that is already huge in what you're doing. But if we connected it to other people doing that all over the globe, the mind boggles. If I look ahead, what emerging challenge do you want regenerative entrepreneurship to tackle next? And how do you imagine leaders stepping up? And by leader, I mean anybody who is involved in driving or leading those innovative projects.
So this is always an evolution.
Mm,
But recently, I started thinking about housing, education, and healthcare. How do we turn our three largest cost drivers into local income generators?
mm,
How do we take real estate and housing? How do we take education? And how do we take well-being and healthcare and flip it from the thing the government is crushing us because the costs are rising faster than income to how do we from the balance sheet say that no, let's just say healthcare.
mm,
We know that pre-distribution addressing preventative measures is way more cost effective than having people go to the ER.
mm,
Right now, I'm working on a potential project with Virtuto Health, which is a healthcare training company in the United States. They do have about 10,000 graduates. They prepare young health workers for medical assistance, community healthcare, peer aids. Like, there's got to be a whole shift from large hospitals
mm.
to community-based healthcare. And the last time we spoke, I was asking you about Trieste, Italy, because I
Yeah.
heard that Trieste did this incredibly well,
Mm,
where they moved their centralized psychiatric facilities that are very, very, very expensive to take care of people to home-based, community-based care.
mm,
You get better outcomes for less cost. I think that, we're trying to address climate change. We're trying to address, autocracy and like the decline of democracy and like information overload, all of these things. We're so concerned. Let's focus on the things that are never going to change. People need somewhere to live.
mm.
We need to educate our young, and we need to educate ourselves throughout our lives, and we need well-being. We need to take care of our health, right? AI is not going to solve all of this stuff. We need to
No.
do this. And right now it's very expensive. So how do we help small community businesses take care of their own communities? And so you turn that cost driver into a regenerative income engine for
Mm,
local communities. You
mm.
could do the same thing with education. Get the money out of these large systems and create these micropods that are federated, right?
Yeah.
Where local teachers are doing it, right? And you're educating, and it's a market-based approach. And with housing and real estate, I haven't quite figured that out, but I know bring down the cost
Mm,
of repurposing property or building housing.
mm.
Affordable housing in the United States, it's like it costs $600,000 to build a one bedroom in California.
Wow. Yeah, yeah.
That makes no sense.
No.
Like obviously, you're never gonna. California has a tremendous homelessness problem
Mm,
because California doesn't know how to build housing, and you have Silicon Valley driving the prices up, and most people just can't afford it. It's like we're creating more unhoused
mm,
because our economy is so lopsided, and we've made it so difficult to build.
mm. In the fact, like lots of economic funding models are exactly the same. We've made it difficult to get access to things. What what do you think is one bold experiment that you think, Alfredo, all leaders should try, like this week or next week, to regenerate rather than maintain their systems, to move to that mindset of collaborate and care as opposed to compete and compare, which is what's happening particularly in organizations?
So one thing we can all do is we can all read. We can all talk to people who are outside of our immediate circles.
Mm,
I think that we're spending way too much time talking to people who look and think like us. And I think we can benefit a lot from broadening our horizons.
mm,
One of the reasons why I'm going on your podcast and why
mm.
I'm talking to a lot of people is because I realize I've been talking to the same people, the same,
Yep.
20 to 40 people every week, the same 100 to 200 people. Maybe I got a 500 people in my, no,
Mm,
500 people is not enough. I'm not getting enough ideas.
mm,
I'm not sharing enough. And so going on this podcast, I want to reach people that I don't know. I want to reach
mm,
people I could never know except by putting myself out there. So I want to reach listeners in England and France and Italy and Spain.
mm,
I want to go to Mondragon. I want to go to
mm,
Trieste. I want to learn about some of the models that are in Europe because I think it's applicable to the United States. And I think the United States, we're not demons.
mm,
Like there's a lot you can learn from us, and it's not just big tech.
mm,
There's a lot more innovation happening in the United States beyond Silicon Valley. So
mm,
like I just want I think everyone should be open-minded, right?
mm.
We need flexibility, we need adaptability. Go back and read old books like Ivan Illich.
Yeah.
Go like explore new ideas and then pilot something small. I
Mm.
believe in small wins, small pilots. You don't need to have a lot of money, but you need to try new things with small groups.
And as we were discussing before the show, it can just be going into different forums, podcasts in this case, but also getting connected to different networks. And that's something we don't do because, like you say, we spend a lot of time with our brains, which are already biased, and sitting in the confirmation bias and sitting with people who think and look like us. And therefore, we get used to the status quo and we get used to not having innovative ideas. So, if you could give a last call to action to our listeners, keep it small, read, challenge your own ideas, and remain open minded. Would there be anything else to add to that, Alfredo?
You don't have to do it all. I'm certainly not doing it all. The world is not on my shoulders.
Hmm.
I didn't create $37 trillion in public debt in the United States.
No.
I didn't put us on this path of AI and replacing human cognition.
Hmm.
Like I'm not just walking around, oh my God, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. I'm like, oh my, how lucky am I to be alive? How lucky are we? Like, I have the freedom to think. I know wonderful people. I invest in my friendships. I have my health. I have a family. Like, I love my life. I'm continually growing and learning.
Mm,
And it's not all on me because I know how hard my parents worked and I know the challenges they face and I know that they failed. They did not achieve all the things that they wanted to achieve. I'm not going to do it because this is generational work. And if
mm,
you really do believe in regeneration, generation after generation, there is no destination.
no.
This is just an
Mm.
invitation to like share and learn and grow and love.
Thank you for that invitation. And I'm going to leave our listeners with that invitation and that I'm going to come back to something you said earlier. When you have ownership, you have agency. And when you have agency, not only can you carry on learning, you can also influence and impact the systems that you are dealing with or that you're trying to change into a more regenerative model. Alfredo, thank you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing your insights and your work. Where can people find out more about you and what you do?
Sharedprosperity.co.co.
Okay.
That's the website for Shared Prosperity. We're a public benefit corporation. That's how we're building out this shared prosperity model. You can also find me on LinkedIn. That's the only real social media platform I use, Alfredo Mathew. I have a website, alfredomathew.com. And it's
Okay.
been a pleasure. I love to talk to anyone. I'm open to conversation.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So I'm going to leave you all with that. And if this episode sparked new ways of thinking about leadership, capital, community, yourself, don't keep it to yourself. Reach out and share it. The links will be in the show notes. So we hope you enjoyed this episode. And if so, please leave us a review. And I'll see you soon for the next episode of Let's Talk Transformation.